Welcome to episode 6 of the Men2Men podcast. I'm Malik Carey, along with my co-host, Brett Kyle. Brett, what's going on, man?
Good afternoon, Malik. How you doing, my brother?
Yo, man, I'm blessed, brother. What's happening? What's happening? You know, it's Black History Month, man, and I'm so excited for the next couple of weeks, man. We're going to bring some really hot topics on the state of Black America. You want to talk about that a little bit, Brett?
Well, basically, in observation of Black History Month, we want to first and foremost celebrate the triumphs and the achievements of great Black men and women before us. Our forefathers, made great contributions to America. They made great contributions to Black history, and they made great contributions to our Black culture. So we certainly want to celebrate them. Obviously, we know slaves built the country and built wealth for other people. And we know and we know that we had great African-American inventors. We know that we had great African-American scientists. We know that we had great African-American doctors. And some of these folks were pioneers in that they created things that were first-time creations. And then, obviously, we all know about the musicians and the entertainers and the athletes that we had that paved the way for entertainers, athletes of today. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The civil rights leaders, to me, were the people I admired the most, were the people who inspired me, motivated me, encouraged me to try to be the best person I could possibly
be. Amen. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, without a doubt. And for them, me personally, I owe them who I am. I owe them where I am. Because without them, without their mentorship, without their leadership, without their example, I don't know where I'd be.
Yeah. And you know what, man? That's really good. And I'm so glad we're going to be talking about that and really bringing some hot topics. But there's some issues facing us today, man, that I see a lot of our, those forefathers, I would like to say, those people who were trendsetters, they set the tone. And in some ways, I think that there's some issues that are facing us that, years later are hitting the forefront. And so you want to talk about that? Let's talk about it, though.
Well, you know what? Without a doubt, I think it's real important to note, though, that we had our first Black president in Obama. We have our first Black female vice president in Kamala Harris. And now we just have our first Black Speaker of the House in Hakeem Jeffries. And so with that, as you and I discussed, we've made great strides. We've come a long way, and you and I talked about that at length. But the most important thing now is to realize, where are we now?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, where are we? What's the state of Black America now? So we want to start this series, and we want to start it today. We're just going to focus on education, the state of Black America when it comes to education. What are your thoughts about that?
Man, I think that I think we have made great strides, and in some ways, I think we've been set back a lot, especially with the education, and especially education amongst my African American young brothers. There's some disparities, right? We're looking at some of the school districts, and we're looking at the education and the dropout rate amongst my African American brothers, my young brothers, and I'm concerned about that. I'm really concerned about that. I've been able to go into some of these school systems and some of these school districts lately and just see the apathy and the disheartedness of just really seeing where our young brothers are. And so, I just want to talk about that a little bit, man. I'm not going to focus. I guess we as many great triumphs and as many great feats that we've had, I do see in some ways, I feel like we're being set back a little bit. So, those are my concerns. So you want to,
Yeah, so when you talk about education, I kind of look at this in a couple different ways. I think there's disparities, obviously.
Definitely.
And we're today, for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to talk about education in the Black community. We're going to talk about the disparities that occur, that have occurred, that are occurring, that impact the Black community in a negative way. And first and foremost, as far as I'm concerned, it's having access. There's a great access disparity. And so you're looking at poor school districts. You're looking at the fact that in those poor school districts, we don't have the internal resources that other school districts.
Exactly.
We don't have the technological resources that are necessary. We don't have the information technology resources that are necessary. And so when you look at the challenges that exist in the inner city or in the urban environments or in poverty school districts, it all starts with the great disparity we have when it comes to access.
Yeah, man. And it is one of those things where we look at the lack of resources. I've been to some schools where they don't even have books. And internet access. I know around when the pandemic hit, there were teachers who were coming to me and in districts saying, "Hey, man, we just got to get these people to get some internet access and some Chromebooks so they can finish their assignments." And so when we look at the lack of resources, it's disheartening, to say the least. It really is. And we're looking at the poor school districts. We're looking at money, right? And you're wondering where the money goes. You're wondering where, and we see in some of these school districts that people are putting a lot of money into these schools, but yet the resources are still lacking. And so I think that the biggest thing for me is really looking at the external resources. When we look at external resources, we're talking about libraries and books, and you're talking about school programs, and we're talking about something as simple as food programs. You go in some of these school districts and they don't even feed the kids a quality meal. And so when I look at that, we're looking at support groups, and so it's a lot. I look at the libraries, and I need to say this. I went into one school and they had a ping pong table in the library and didn't have books. And it was scary. And you looked at it like, and I said this, the old saying, you want to hide $1 million from a black man, you put it in a library and you put it in books. And so we're not being taught to read. We don't have the resources to even think about building a strong library. The kids aren't going in the libraries unless there's computers in there to play games.
Or
girls. And so, yeah, right. I forgot about the girls. Yeah. So, man, it really is, and let's talk about the external support systems. I mean, there's just so much.
Yeah. When you talk about external support, so picture this, you're kindergarten, you're in 5th grade, you're in 7th grade, it's 3:00, it's 3:30, school's out. Where you going?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's nowhere for you to go, and you already know that you didn't learn what you were supposed to learn in first period. Or if you're an elementary kid, you didn't pick up on the math assignment.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a 7th grader, you didn't pick up on the science assignment. So you go to school all day long, and you are fully aware of the fact that you missed it. You missed out on whatever it is you're supposed to learn.
Or you don't even realize you missed out on it. You got 2 going, right? And so, you definitely are in a bind because you don't even know if you missed out on it or not.
And so it's 3:30, it's 4:00, and where are these kids going?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have the place to go after school to say, I don't understand this, I didn't get this. Or, to your point, there isn't anybody there to say, did you get this?
Mm-hmm.
Did you understand this?
Mm-hmm.
So this happens Monday, and it happens again Tuesday, and it happens week 1 in September, and it happens week 3 in October. And here you are in November, when the first semester is pretty much already over, and you have already failed out.
And then you look at December, and you're away for Christmas and holidays, and in January you come back and you're being tested.
Yeah, you're being tested.
And you don't know a clue about what I'm being tested on, so I'm just sitting there filling in the blanks so that some of these schools can get a few dollars or, I don't even want to talk about the prison pipeline, but that's another story. But it really is about just like you said, not having when we were growing up, man, we went to the library, right? We had to go to the library, and it was a fun place to be. And some of these communities don't even have libraries anymore. Forget just going into the schools, but the communities themselves.
Yeah, and we talked about the lack of, when we're talking about the poor access to external resources. The access is poor because these resources aren't there.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no after school program to kind of pick you up. There is no support group or groups of or organizations to say, you can come here and learn how to read. You can come here and learn how to problem solve. You can come here and learn how to communicate. You can come here and learn how to socialize. You can come here and learn how to write a check if you're an older person.
Mm-hmm.
There's no learning done.
There's no learning. The learning is over. And let me say this: some of the teachers are fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Because they want to teach, they want to learn. I mean, they want the kids to learn, but they're not getting any support even at home.
Yeah, and that's a different problem, but a real problem. And clearly, when you talk about external resources, and we'll come back, we'll talk a little bit more about apathy later on in the program.
Yes.
But that's a huge point. If you're not getting the support home, if you're not getting the support from the teacher, it makes it very difficult as a student. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about this access disparity, it leads to a quality disparity.
Oh, definitely.
So the quality of education,
the curriculum, the books, the learning, again, we talked about it early with even some of the external access, just having internet access and, so talk to me, it really is about, if I'm not getting the external access, then I'm not getting the quality either, right? And so,
well, the whole quality disparity of education to me starts with the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at school district, and most of the time, poor schools are part of poor school districts.
Yes, sir.
So this is a district-wide phenomenon, a district-wide problem that impacts every school in a given district.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about preschool. We're talking about elementary school. Was that K through 5?
Junior high school.
We're talking about middle school,
mm-hmm.
and then we're talking about high school. Mm-hmm. And so, if you have an subpar curriculum, just stay with me for a second,
mm-hmm.
okay? Here's what's going on. If you have a subpar curriculum in kindergarten, you have 5-year-olds who turn 6 going into first grade who aren't even able to function at a first grade level.
And let's start at pre-K.
Yeah.
We're not going, let's start there. So you're talking about pre-K, and then you should be on a certain reading level by kindergarten, first grade, that you're not. And then, that those pivotal ages are really pre-K to third grade. And so that's where your foundation is set. And your foundation is being disrupted for whatever reason. And now before the pandemic, now I'm talking to educators, and they're saying, think about that kid who they were learning online and didn't have the access and resources. And then you look up and they missed kindergarten and you throw them in first or second grade, and how behind they are now. And so it really is, it's uphill battle.
Yeah. And back to the curriculum piece, in these, what we call the quality disparity with education or within the educational system, kindergarten curriculums are subpar.
Mm-hmm.
First grade curriculums are comparatively subpar. Second, third, fourth grade, fifth grade curriculums are comparatively subpar. What I mean by that is in the urban environments, in the inner cities, and in what they call poverty school districts, the basic of basics are taught.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if my kid learns the basics, and aces out the basics as a first grader, aces out the basics as a fourth grader, aces out the basics as a seventh grader, aces out the basics as a ninth grader, by the time he gets to high school and he aces out the basics, he's not prepared to compete with my nephew who lives 5 minutes down the street,
15 minutes up the road. They got all the resources.
in a better school district.
Let alone what's going on across the world coming out of the Asian market, right? And so they're so far behind that there's no competition. Yes, it's absolutely true.
Yeah, so strictly from a curriculum, just strictly from a look at my curriculum versus a suburban curriculum. And even if I master my curriculum, I am set up for failure. And that's the first problem, in my opinion, when it comes to the this quality disparity.
And when we look at that, I mean, you're so spot on. It's almost, I think it's almost designed like that. You know, I think that when you look at what's going on in these inner cities and, you know, the resources and the lack of education and lack of curriculum, that it is really designed to even, I'm just going to say it, to keep these kids behind. And so, you know, a reading, you know, I've talked to so many young brothers who just don't even like to read, who don't. So if I'm giving you a curriculum and I'm talking about books to you and I'm talking about this stuff and you don't even want to read because it has not been fun, it has not been come across that way because the curriculums have designed to be just not for you. You're reading stuff that you're not interested in. And then so again, it really is about understanding what these kids need. I think that the American school system as a whole has not transformed itself. And then when you add the stuff that these kids are facing, it really is these kids, they're just being defeated early. You know, and you said it earlier about, you know, just if I ace it, if the kid, you know, if I ace first grade, second grade, and I'm so far behind, when I even go to apply for that job or whatever, I'm being discouraged. So it's so much, Brett.
Yeah, and again, to me, the crux is the fact that you talked about kids not wanting to read. I'm talking about kids not being able to read.
Right.
And so,
that's what I meant. Yeah, not wanting to because they don't know how to. Yeah, definitely. Yes.
So not being able to read means you can't do anything. It means you can't learn any subject. It means you don't have the ability to even reason or ration or make rational decisions because you can't figure anything out if you can't read it. So not only, and I want you to understand what I'm saying, not only are our children not learning what they need to learn, they're learning how not to even learn. They're learning how to be completely dysfunctional. And I don't want to paint a total doom and gloom picture, but there's serious realities to
but
this.
yeah, you know, and we got to talk about reality and let's move on because that brings us to our next topic of apathy. It has created straight apathy. It has created an apathetic environment, right? So if I got parents that are apathetical and I got the students that are, and then the administrative is, and then we talk about, you know, creating the student apathy. I mean, it really across the board is people who just don't, I'm not going to say they don't care. They don't know how to care.
Well, a couple things. Number one, you're 100% right. Apathy is a major and significant component of this quality disparity or this educational disparity in our country. Unfortunately, and by the way, let me just say up front, not all poverty parents are apathetic.
No.
Let me just say this.
Right.
Not all poverty-stricken students are apathetic. Not all teachers in poverty-stricken districts or schools are apathetic. Not all administrators or principals, not all of them are apathetic. The problem is, though, too many are. TOO. Too many are.
Mhm.
There are too many
And
apathetic
I
parents.
believe that it has created, and like you said, not all. We want to be clear about that, but it has created a great level of apathy in the urban area school districts that we're talking about.
Yeah, and to me, it starts with parental apathy, and you have a chain reaction. You have a what is that thing called? An avalanche, so to speak.
Hmm.
When parents are apathetic for whatever reason, students are 75% likely to be what?
Apathetic,
Apathetic.
and let's talk about this. And I know we want to talk about statistics, but you got about 65 to 69% of young black men living at home with single mothers who are just trying to work and send their kids to school to hopefully get something out of it. You got 35% of mothers who are not educated themselves. And so, I mean, we're talking about 2023. And, you said, yeah, we had the first black president, and we've had the first black vice president. We've had the first speaker of the House. But you still got kids in 2023 who are hoping to be the first person to graduate high school.
Well, yeah, but 100% right. But here's the thing. Here's why apathy is so dangerous. If you're apathetic, if you're an apathetic parent, you're going to have chances are you're going to have an apathetic student. An apathetic student is not going to aspire to be anything.
No,
That's the very definition of apathy. Is basically I just don't care.
I don't care.
And when you see, and stay with me for a second on this. When you are a teacher and you've got 20 kids or 30 kids, well, it's 35 kids in the inner city. You got 35 kids and 90% of them are apathetic. At what point do you think the teacher's going to become apathetic?
Oh, yeah, because they're throwing their hands up.
Yeah, they burn out and they get to the point where they say, you know what, I didn't sign up for this, or I'm in this so long now. Let me just do what I got to do because I got to pay my mortgage.
And I got to buy my time.
I got to send my kids to school, and I got to, prepare for my retirement, and I got to take care of my mother, and I got to take care of my kids. I'm this sandwich, I'm this sandwich parent. And so you go to school every day and you look to just survive another day. And so therein lies the unfortunate but reality in the apathy that teachers have to take on. Now, on the other hand, Malik, again, I want to be real clear about this. I know a lot of teachers who are non-apathetic, but they teach in better school districts.
Oh, no doubt.
And so because they're in better school districts, there's less apathy on the part of the teacher. On the part of the student, less apathy on the part of the parent, and there comes a relationship and a partnership.
But we're talking about on the whole. And when we think about the broad stroke, right, 13% of African American we're 13% of the population in most districts as African American men and women. We're going to schools that are inferior to our counterparts. Would you agree on that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. We're talking about, our sons were blessed. They went to better school districts. They did those things. We're talking about those school districts that are failing our children. And, in the apathy that's been created through the failure of our students, again, with the curriculum and all of those things. And then, we thought that what, to me, I think has been birthed into apathy. And so, the administrators, just like the teachers, the administrators, they're doing so much disciplining that they're not even principals anymore. They're disciplinarians.
And so,
right? And so are the teachers.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a vicious cycle, and it's an unfortunate chain of events. This whole apathetic indifference toward education is unfortunate, but it's paramount in our community, in poverty-stricken communities. And so the challenge is recognizing the apathy that starts with a parent, extends to a student, impacts the teacher, impacts the principal, impacts the administrator, and in effect impacts the local community. Because here's what happens when you have 7, 8, 9, 10 different schools in a particular city and they're all failing. The community can't possibly thrive when the school system around the community is failing.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the schools themselves, the district itself, can't look to the community for support and help because the community itself has
become apathetic
or indifferent to education. So it's sad. It really is.
And so, you know what, though, one of the things that we have to look at, and I still believe that, there's a solution, right? There's still hope. And one of the things that I look at, when we look at to the local community is, it's really empowering the local community to really just say, listen, man, we can't give up on these kids, because so many have thrown up their hands. So many of them are frustrated. They're tired. And, we know what apathy creates, but let's talk more about, we know the statistics, right? There are, the young boys they're not graduating. They're dropping out of high school. But one of the things that as we were preparing for this, I looked at something, Brett. It will be surprising to you is we're still graduating our children at a little higher rate than our white counterparts. They drop out of school at about 4.8%, where African-American brothers are about 4.25%. The Indian and Native American, they're the highest as far as that. And then brown brothers, they're up there, right? They're at about 7.4% at a dropout rate. And so, the kids are trying to get through school. I mean, that was something that, they're trying, even if they're coming out behind, they're still graduating. They're still, they may graduate behind, but especially some of the better school districts. I mean, I know Newark, they graduate their kids at about 75% overall. They leading, believe it or not, in graduation. So, I mean, some of the schools they're trying to get the kids through, and I know some of it is No Child Left Behind. They've created some ways to push the kids out, even though they're not prepared. So, talk to me about that, Brett. What's up?
Well, the bottom line is this: bravo to those who, to that 75% who do graduate. The real problem, though, is they graduate to what? They're not, and again, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer on everybody and everything, but too many. And again, my whole thing is too many. TOO. There are too many of our black young men and black women who do graduate from high school. They're not prepared to go to college. Mm-mm. They're not prepared to enter into
the workforce. Let's just talk about the workforce. I think one of the things, and I think we got to be careful because everyone is not meant to go to college, right? I just think we need to stop forcing, everyone goes to college, but let's start preparing them to go into the workforce, right? And whatever that workforce is. But we're trying to get them out of high school, and we're talking about, what college are you going to? But and I think we'll talk about this more in the solution, but I think there's some other things that we need to really start talking about, as far as, pushing college is not for everyone. I just believe that. I don't believe all of these kids are meant to go to college, and that's for anybody, but there are some other solutions. I think we need to get into more back to technical schools. I happen to went to a vocational high school myself. I learned carpentry. I've been blessed, and even in that, I remember one of my teachers, Brett, they told me I wasn't going to be anything but a carpenter. And not to diss any carpenters, but I had more in me than just being a carpenter. But you know what? I learned carpentry. I learned the skill that's transferable. Because I was an entrepreneur, I opened a construction company, but let's look at entrepreneurship training. Let's look at bringing back plumbing and auto mechanics, and let's start doing those things. And a lot of the districts have gotten away from that because they're under resourced. Let's build some of these technical schools and these VOTECs back up. And so I think that that's really a part of, that can be a part of the solution. But if we keep pushing college, man, we got to get them out of high school.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I did not mean to infer that everybody has to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
I did not mean to infer that that's the ultimate end goal for
Yeah, no, and I know you didn't mean it in a way, but I just hear it so much. We go into these schools. Hey, what college are you going to? And they're like, college, or what's going on is they're thinking so low that maybe I can go to junior college, which is nothing wrong with that either. But really, I think really start to think about some more of the solution. So what you got for me on that?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's important for parents to care enough. It's important to identify in any given school a parent or two or three who actually cares, who actually isn't apathetic. And
can I speak to that for a second, Brett? You go to some of the school systems that we raised our kids in, and on parent teacher conference, you can't even get in the parking lot. I've talked to teachers and I've seen it myself, where when you go into some of these other school districts, when we go into the school districts that we're talking about, you got 30 kids in a class, like you said, and you got 3 parents or 4 parents that are showing up. And the teachers are hoping that more show up. So what do we do despite if the parents don't show up? Because you do have some kids that in some ways push through that. Because if you have the right teacher that cares, if you have someone who cares, it may not be the parent. So what do you think about that?
Well, like I was saying, if you have 2 or 3 parents who do care in a given school, I think it's important for those 2 or 3 parents to get together. I think it's important for those 2 or 3 parents to go to the school. I think it's important for those 2 or 3 parents to perhaps see if they can find 2 or 3 or 4 other parents, because I think in some cases there are. And let me just make this point, Malik. I think in some cases there are parents who are tired, worn out, frustrated, and their apathy is driven by their circumstance and their condition, as opposed to just being apathetic or indifferent. So the point I'm making is, if you have 2 or 3 parents, my whole thing is real simple. You get 2 or 3 to go find 2 or 3. You get 5 or 6 parents in any given school. You go to the school, you go to the principal, and you say to the principal, we want to create a committee. We want to create a committee. We'll call ourselves the Parental Committee for Better Education, or whatever you want to call yourself. And we want to address 3 basic things. We want to address the curriculum at this particular school for the grades that this school is responsible for teaching. We want to address the resources that are necessary, both internal and external. And we want to focus on driving local community support, be that sponsorship from corporations, be that sponsorship or I shouldn't say sponsorship,
Partnership.
Be that partnership from corporations, partnership from organizations, partnerships from anybody who gives a you-know-what about the kids in the community that they live in, that they do business in, that they evolve in. And you take this committee, and this committee is going to meet on a regular basis, and this committee is going to hold accountable the administrators, the principals, and the teachers accountable for teaching a better curriculum, hold them accountable for getting the resources that are needed, and hold them accountable for partnering with the people that they need to partner with in order to give their kids the best possible education. And it's broken down into 3 different levels. It's basic skills, because let's face it, Malik, to your point, everybody isn't going to be able to go to college or want to go to college.
Well, I want to go to college. Right?
And so for those who aren't able to go to college, let's make sure that they go from kindergarten through 12th grade and at least get basic skills education so they can prepare themselves to do what you talked about, going to all these other fields.
Right.
And then the other thing is offering these advanced courses, offering college prep courses, offering high advanced courses, so that, to your point, the students who care, the students who are able, the students who are willing to do the work can graduate, can compete with anybody else.
And let's be real. You got some really bright students that can do those. And a lot of those schools, I mean, and those kids mostly are filtered out and go to some of the more magnet schools and stuff like that, because their parents who see that are getting them out of those schools. So, I mean, you have those kids that are really excelling, and, but their parents know it and say, hey, listen, we're pulling you out of here and we're going to put you somewhere where you're going to perform. So, I think that's one of the things that we do see when you see those gifted and talented kids who are in those AP classes, or those, they're just not even in the bunch that we're talking about.
Yeah, but first of all, you're 100% right, and God bless those who are able to do that and able to succeed in that environment. But again, we talk about access. We started off talking about access. So those folks have access to those schools.
Right.
And they take advantage of that access. But I'm talking about now the overwhelming number of inner city kids who can't go to magnet schools because of apathy. And so you asked me about solutions. I think the most important thing that each school can do is have half a dozen parents come together, go to the principal, go to administrators, create these committees. Each committee needs to have, I think, in my opinion, at least one teacher in the English area, math area, reading area, science area, and have teachers on all levels. So you might have a group that focuses on the 2nd and 3rd graders. You might have a different teacher in science, 4th and 5th graders. Then when you get to the middle school, obviously.
Here's one of my challenges, and I love what you said, but one of the things that I think we need to have is a lot more black male educators.
Yeah, but
black male teachers.
Yeah, but
right. And before, because you do have that, but most of them are women.
Yes.
So I think we need to really look at, we need more black male educators, period.
Yes. But here's the thing. So we get more black male educators, which is obviously important because you want to have the role model. You want to have the mentor. You want to have that person that you look up to. And you mentioned this on several occasions. You know what? If you have a single black mother, there's no male in the household.
Right.
And so that teacher, whether it's an English teacher, a math teacher, a science teacher, or just a guidance counselor for that matter, if that person is right-minded and that person's there for the right reason and that person hasn't become apathetic, hasn't become poisoned, that person can change that kid's life, whether it's a young boy or a young girl, just by being there.
Day, I'm still close to my 5th grade teacher who was a black male, who was a role model to this day. And he was probably one, I think, and we're still talking about, like, I came out of school in the 80s, right? So I didn't see a lot of black male teachers then. And for me to still be close at 52 to my 5th grade teacher, which was 1980 when I was in the 5th grade, it's still an uphill battle. And he made a big difference in my life. And so, I just believe that men, they make a difference. I heard something today on one of the shows I was watching as I was preparing for this, and it was talking about men raise men, men raise boys, right? And so a lot of the teachers who are become apathetic are women teachers, right? They're frustrated. They're frustrated on many fronts because one of the things that a lot of the female teachers are able to do and who's predominant, they're absolutely able to capture some of these girls, but who's really failing are our young black boys. And so if they don't have the role models, if they're used to mom fussing at them and they're used to coming to school and the teachers are in their ear, they're just like whatever, and so if we have the male role model who is the male teacher, who is the educator, and we need to look at this too. Not just, we need some male role models that are not just talking about sports, right? Because we got the coaches for some of the kids, right? So you got 10 or 15 boys that are playing basketball, so they got the coaches, and you got the football team, and so they get it. But we're talking about the everyday young man who doesn't have the coach, who doesn't have the teacher. They're the ones that are really being left behind.
That's a great point. And again, what you just said kind of comes back to why I think it's critically important to kind of create these committees, because on those committees, again, you're going to have teachers in different subjects. You're going to have administrators. You're going to have a principal or vice principal. You're going to have parents. And here's why this is important, because what you just said are the types of things they're talking about. They're talking about curriculum. They're talking about mentorship. They're talking about guidance and guidance counseling. They're talking about creating tracks of success, for lack of a better term. Your third grader, your first grader, your kindergartner, your seventh grader, your eighth grader, whatever it is. Here is the track they're on. And here is the track of success that they can have. So let's talk about what that is, what that looks like, what kind of resources we need, who's involved, who's going to be in charge. Let's talk about constant communication. To your point, Malik, let's talk about the impact that black male teachers can have on our young black men. Let's talk about the actual impact that black female teachers can have on our young girls, because what you said is important. And I think by creating these committees, it does, the old term, poke the bear.
Yep.
By creating these committees, you're waking up parents. You're waking up teachers. You're waking up administrators. You're waking up principals. And sometimes some of us wake up when we're poked because we say, wow, he does care. Oh, I didn't know she cared. I didn't know he cared. Oh, I didn't know he cared. And all of a sudden, there's 6 people who care. 6 people who care and can sit together and put their heads together, put their hearts together, can do powerful things.
Definitely.
Can do powerful things. So,
Right.
so there's no question
And that's really just, like you said, it starts with the parent, though. It starts with the parents advocating for their children, and that's where we go from apathy to advocating, and really empowering the parents to get out here and advocate for your children. I'm big on that. You have to have these children. And I've talked to a lot of parents. I've talked to a lot of teachers, and what they talk about really is the lack of interest that the parents have had, because even when we would call, if a parent, God forbid, if a teacher called our parents, you got it from the teacher, you got it when you got home. The teachers today are, you call a parent and it's like, what did you do? Not what did the kid do. And so I think really just empowering the parents to be able to say, listen, we're here, we care for your kids, but we need you to care, because and this brings the teacher-parent relationship into tact, to say, listen, I can't care for your child more than you do.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and I think that's the model now. What you just outlined is the model now, where you have teachers. You've seen this, I've seen this. I've been in schools and I've been in teaching environments where you see these frustrated teachers, and what frustrates them more is getting the parents to get the kids right, getting the parents to get the kids right. Well, I'm talking about something a little bit different. I'm talking about starting with the parent and
Exactly.
having the parent say, hey, we're raising our hand, we're stepping up on the table, we're beating our chest, and we are advocating for our kids, and we're doing that by asking you, Mr. and Mrs. Teacher, you, Mr. and Mrs. Principal, Vice Principal, you, Mr. and Mrs. Administrator, we're asking you to partner with us.
Right. But can I ask you a question though? Don't you think that may even start with a teacher or two saying, bringing some of these parents into the room and saying, listen, we want you to be empowered. We want you to do, because some of these parents don't even know how to do that. And so if I'm a teacher, I'm coming into to parents and I'm saying, hey, listen, your kid's got a lot of potential. I see certain great things. But again, I need you to step up and empowering the parent to step up, teaching that parent how to step up to advocate for their children. Because what you're talking about, to me, needs to be even taught from a teacher standpoint, being able to say in a loving way, again, like I said, I can't love your child as much as you do, but let me show you what this kid needs. Because I believe that if you got the right teacher and they build that relationship with the parent to empower that parent to go out and educate and advocate for their child, then I think that that's where that relationship becomes more dynamic.
Yeah, and to your point though, here's the challenge with that. And first of all, I hear you. And if that was the case, I don't think we'd be in the problem. I don't think we'd have the problem we have now. I think the problem we have now is teachers not being able to
call on the parent,
to call on the parents, to influence the parents, or to use your word, to even empower the parent. Mm-hmm. They want to, but you can't make a teacher be involved. You can't make a teacher unapathetic. But what I'm calling for, and what I'm talking about, and what I'm suggesting, what I'm hoping for is, again, starting, in my humble opinion, starting where this has to start, and that's in the household with the parent.
Yeah.
And again, Malik, the point I'm trying to make is you get these a few parents together, they go to teachers, and I think the word can get out. Oh, Malik and Brett and 3 or 4 other parents met with Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Jones. I want some of that. So now all of a sudden you got 4 or 5 teachers involved. Now you have a committee of 8 people. You get the principal involved. You get the vice principal involved. Now you have a committee, and now you have an agenda. And the agenda has 8. Every phase and facet of what a great education looks like is part of this agenda. And parent and teacher and principal and administrator are all together, all on the same page, all wanting to make this thing happen. I think it can happen. It has to be done on a school by school level. And if you get it done in school number 1, if you get it done in school number 4, next thing you know, school number 7 is involved. The next thing you know,
you've created that avalanche that you talked about earlier.
If there's a smart superintendent, if there's a caring board of education, they now jump in and they now take this thing even to the next level, and they turn poor districts into stellar districts. So that, to me, that's how you fix the what we call the educational gap in this country.
Well, I think you just laid out a wonderful plan, Brett. I think that you're spot on. I guess some of my apathy is kicking in.
Well, why would you? You don't appear to be apathetic at all.
No, I know. I'm kidding. No, I'm joking. But when you look at that, we do have to get the parents more involved. And really, but I think it takes a spark. I like what you just said. But I think it takes someone like you and I, and people like us, right? To get out here and help advocate for some of these parents, or teach these parents. Someone has to teach these parents how to advocate.
Yeah, but
and it may not come from the school district. It may come from people like you and I. It may, and this is something that I want to talk about in the next few minutes that we have left. Is one of the things that I talk about is, we made it. I graduated from an inner city school, but going back. Even if I've moved away, and I love to go back, and I love to talk and empower the students. But like you said, even trying to get to the parents, talking to administrators, I've been blessed to be able to go into these school districts and build relationships with superintendents across the state and do those things. It really, I think that we know better when we do better, right? You know better when you know better, you do better. But understanding that education is so valuable, and I don't. President Obama went to Harvard University, right? Kamala, the Speaker of the House. You know, we got these people who valued education. The thing that I don't see in these last few minutes, Brett, is even some of the forefront fathers and the people we talked about as we talk about Black History Month, they valued education, and I just don't see the same value in education as before. I don't.
Well,
And I don't see the same value from the communities that we had. You know, your generation, you're a little ahead of me. Your generation was really the first to really produce a lot of college graduates, right? That class of 76 to 84. You guys produced more college graduates than ever before coming from Black. And then my generation was next. And then for me, it's been a huge decline. But it's just the value of education amongst our Black folks is what I'm concerned about.
well, it goes back to apathy. We talked about that at length a few minutes ago. We talked about the apathy, and that's the reason why I not to beat a dead horse. I'm not going to go over this again, but that's the reason why it has to start with 2 or 3 people who care. Because if you don't care, we ain't going nowhere. As simple as that. So I do believe that it can be done if you bring people who do care together and plan and organize. Now, you said something that was pretty interesting. You said that parents may not know how to, or this one may not know how to. They may want to, but they don't know how to. So here's how you learn. You get in this group. You get part of this committee. And one of the things that I think 6 or 7 or 8 people who sit around the table or somebody. I don't care who you are. You have a group of 7 or 8 people sitting around a table. Somebody's going to say, you know what? I don't know how to do this. And so what they're going to do is somebody's going to say, well, let's research it. Mm-hmm. And so you teach each other how to do something that nobody in the group knows how to do, or the person in the group who knows how to do it teaches somebody else. Or you go outside. We talked about external resources. Part of this committee is going to make a list of the external resources that they need to have access to, that they're going to need to. We talked about partnerships. Part of this committee is going to list the partnerships that they need to be a part of. And so you're going to learn how to do things based on the people you partner with. You're going to learn how to do things based on the things that you actually learn outside of the group, and then you bring it inside the group. So we're meeting once a month, every 2 weeks, and everybody goes away, and you have an assignment, I have an assignment, she has an assignment, she has an assignment. You come back, 5, 6, 7 different people are sharing what they learn. Guess what? 7 people just learned 7 or 8 different things. So it goes back to just coming together, having goals, having an agenda, and whatever those things happen to be, you knock them out. You check the boxes, so to speak. And that's how this group grows. And at the end of the day, the kids benefit. This is all about benefiting the kids. It's all about creating an environment where it's all about creating an environment where we don't have to be stuck with having kids who are not prepared for life. And that's what this conversation is about. And hopefully somebody hears it, and hopefully somebody says, you know what, I do care, and I do want to do something about it. I am going to find somebody who cares like I do, and we are going to do something about it.
And I think that's very important. And then one of the last things I want to talk about is, really starting to even look at building some of our own schools. I know that's another conversation, but really, I think just really understanding and starting, I think really starting to allow these parents and these children to start to value education again. I believe there are a lot of kids who, we're talking about, again, 2023, and I'm still maybe the first one to graduate from high school, let alone college. And so I really believe that if we began to value education again, to push the envelope, I mean, really push the envelope on why education is important. I remember growing up and my uncle saying to me, son, the most important, because he called me a son, the most important thing in this world is your education. And really split it ain't your job, it's your education, and they can't take that from you. And so these last, few minutes, give me some closing thoughts on, the importance, and really just talking about the importance that these young men and women and parents need to really do so that we can begin to have them value education.
Well, the way you help people value education is to be in front of them and have people who have an education talk about what the education meant to them. So, for example, you're from the inner city. You get in front of a group of little kids in a school, in an auditorium, and you talk about your journey, and you talk about, but in order to do that, you have to humble yourself to be where they are. You have to realize what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what their fears are, what their concerns are, and you have to understand the apathy that is in them. And so you have to pull that out of them. You have to, or purge that out of them, I should say. So they no longer become apathetic. They become interested. And then because of you, they go from being interested to wanting to take action. You tell them to go home and talk to their single parent mother. You tell them to go home and talk to their grandmother who's raising 4 of them. You tell them to go home and talk to their father who's in and out of the house and say, I want to be educated and I need you to help me do it, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, whoever. So you get the kids, to answer your question, you get the kids to influence the parents. And now we start this cycle that we talked about before, when you have a bunch of parents getting together and making this thing happen. In short, you have to encourage people and you have to influence people in order to change people's minds, in order to change people's habits, in order to change people's behaviors. And the way to do that is to come where they are, meet them where they are.
Meet them where they are. I like that.
Get into their hearts so that you can then get into their mind. And if you speak to them the right way, if you are empathetic, and if you can connect to them, you can encourage them, you can influence them to want more. And then finally, the last thing I'll say is you always, 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 always have to give somebody a plan because it's not just encouragement.
They need a plan.
It's not just a football coach going, rah, 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 let's go get them, let's go get them. Well, coach, you know what? We're down 28-0. It's halftime. So let's go get them. Ain't working. What do we have to do specifically to stop their passing game? What do we have to do specifically to stop the blitz? What do we have to do specifically to stop their, they return 2 different kickoffs. So you have to be very specific in terms of a plan. This is how we're going to do it. And if you can be specific, you have a chance.
No, Brett, that was awesome, man. I love that. You always got the plan, brother. So you know what? And I thank you for another great episode of Men2Men, and it's been really great educational, really just understanding why education is so important. And so, you want to take us out, Brett?
Yeah, I just want to say a couple quick things. For the month of February, we want to focus, again, we're celebrating Black History Month. We're talking about the state of Black America. We're going to talk about employment. We're going to talk about housing. We're going to talk about justice reform.
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice reform over the next few weeks. But next week or 2 weeks from now, when our next podcast post is going to be Valentine's week. So we do want to take a pause from the state of Black America.
And we want to talk about Black love. All right, man. Thank you again for a great episode. We can be reached on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and SoundCloud. And so, again, that's www.men2men, and that's MEN, the number 2, men, podcast.com. If you want to leave us a comment, leave it on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. And we thank you for a great show.